Look, do I want to be talking about RFK Jr. again? No, absolutely not. But his most recent public embarrassment inspired a few thoughts in me that I wanted to share with you. And one of the thoughts is actually a positive thing. So that's always nice for this channel, where I usually just talk about depressing examples of the downfall of humanity. First of all, if you're new here, you can pause this video if you'd like and go back and watch my previous video on RFK Jr., where I describe the reasons why he's a horrible anti-vaccine lunatic who is being pushed through this campaign by right-wing hate mongers. So I'm not going to rehash all of those facts here. Second, if you're not aware of his most recent controversy, I'm going to play a video originally posted, I think, by the New York Post. It's RFK Jr. speaking at a press event at an Upper East Side New York restaurant. Before I play it, though, I saw in the comments on my last video about RFK Jr., a lot of people had questions and jokes about his voice. RFK Jr. has spasmodic dysphonia, which is a neurological condition that causes involuntary spasms in the vocal folds, which leads to a kind of strangled sound. And I can understand that it might be difficult for some people to listen to, but we do not mock or dismiss people here because of a disorder that they have no control over. We mock or dismiss them because of the stupid shit they say. All right? Got it? All right, here we go.
And we need to talk about bioweapons. The level, I know a lot now about bioweapons because I've been doing a book on it for the past 2.5 years, and you know, the technology that we now have to develop these microbes, we've put hundreds of millions of dollars into ethnically targeted microbes. The Chinese have done the same thing. In fact, COVID-19, there's an argument that it is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately. The races that are most immune to COVID-19 are because of the structure of the genetic structure, genetic differentials among different races of the receptors, of the ACE2 receptor. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. But we don't know whether it was deliberately targeted that or not. But there are papers out there that show the racial and ethnic differential and impact to that. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons, and we are developing ethnic bioweapons. That's what all those labs in the Ukraine.
This is pretty blatant anti-Semitic boilerplate claiming that a virus was genetically engineered to ethnically target everyone except for Chinese people and Ashkenazi Jewish people. It's an update on a very old anti-Semitic trope of Jewish Bolshevism, Jewish communism, the idea that communism is a Jewish plot to control the world, that communists and Jews are interchangeable. In this case, the communists that the Jews are in league with are the Chinese government, I guess. I don't know if RFK Jr. is himself anti-Semitic, but it doesn't really matter. This soundbite proves beyond a shadow of a doubt who he has allied with and who he is listening to, which is clearly alt-right bigots. As I mentioned last month, there's still no evidence to suggest that COVID-19 was engineered at all, let alone that it was genetically programmed to attack non-Jewish white and black people. Several well-researched papers have been published in the past year alone showing that this virus most likely evolved in the same way previous coronaviruses evolved, in nature, likely in an animal like a bat. RFK Jr. says that there are papers out there that show the racial or ethnic differential and impact, which I assume means that he's talking about the well-known fact that certain populations were disproportionately affected by COVID-19. But non-Jewish white people are not one of those populations. By the end of 2001, researchers could clearly see that the people in the United States who were worst affected were the people in marginalized communities. Black, Latinx, and American Indian persons have been hospitalized and died at a higher rate than white persons consistently from the start of the pandemic. Early data show that hospitalization and mortality rates for Black, Latinx, and American Indian children are higher than white children in a worrying trend. The pandemic has likely worsened the gaps in wealth, employment, housing, and access to healthcare, the social determinants of health that caused the disparities in the first place. School closures will have a long-lasting impact on the widening achievement gaps between Black and Latinx students and white students. In the earlier vaccination phase, Black and Latinx persons were being vaccinated at a lower rate than their proportion of cases due to vaccine hesitancy, misinformation, and barriers to access. Is that because Black, Latinx, and American Indian populations have certain genes that allow them to be targeted by a virus? No, absolutely not. Race simply isn't that clear cut. There is no gene that indicates that someone is Black or white or Jewish. There are diseases for which some people in certain ethnic groups are genetically predisposed. They can follow racial lines. For instance, sickle cell anemia is more common amongst Black people in the United States because it occurs when a person inherits two abnormal copies of a specific gene from their parents. And that abnormal gene is mostly found in regions of sub-Saharan Africa where malaria is present. It persisted over time in part because having one copy of the gene actually provides some protection against malaria, so the person who has it is more likely to survive long enough to reproduce. Unfortunately, having two copies of that gene results in this deadly condition. But even though that means that people we consider Black have a higher risk of sickle cell anemia, it doesn't mean that a person who has that particular abnormal gene will be someone we consider Black, or that anyone without that particular mutation is someone we consider not Black. We know that sickle cell anemia wasn't genetically engineered to target Black people because it would be wildly inefficient for that purpose, and there would be no way to keep it contained to Black communities. Genetics just don't work like that, and if you want to know more about that topic, I heartily recommend you pick up my friend Adam Rutherford's book, A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived. I know I plug that book a lot, but it's just so good. So no, COVID-19 didn't target the genetics of white and Black people. The reason why Black, Latino, and Indigenous communities were disproportionately affected by COVID-19 is, as researchers point out, due to systemic racism, lack of engagement with those communities, and health inequity. But while COVID-19 was not engineered to target the genetics of certain groups, it may actually have evolved in a way that negatively affects a different group of genetically similar people, which is where I get to talk about an interesting and positive science news update. A brand new paper published this week in Nature found that certain people might have a genetic mutation that gives them 10 times the protection against COVID-19 compared to average. This is thanks to a supercharged human leukocyte antigen, or HLA. Your HLA system is a group of genes that code proteins that then cruise around your body, grabbing little bits of protein trash and holding them up for immune cells to come take a look at and then figure out if it's something that needs attacking. It's long been known that some HLA proteins are better than others at picking out which bits to grab and hold up to show your immune cells. So a team of immunogeneticists wanted to see if that could explain why some people get COVID but then don't even notice. They recruited about 30,000 people who were part of the National Marrow Donor Program because people who are in that database have already had their HLA genes decoded. A quick aside, I'm in the National Marrow Donor Program, and you should be too if you're in the US, because your marrow could literally save someone's life, and you don't even need it, really. Like, how much marrow are you even using right now? Probably not all of it. It's super easy to sign up. They'll send you a little kit. You swab your cheek, you send it back in, and then you just wait to be called upon to save a life, like Batman. But instead of a bat signal, it's just a phone call. Anyway, HLA is important in donating marrow, as donors and recipients need to match at least 6 markers for it to work. So they followed their 30,000 subjects from July of 2020 until April of 2021, when vaccines became more widely available. During that time, about 13,000 of the subjects tested positive for COVID. In that group, about 10% of the people who tested positive were asymptomatic. And in that group, 20% all had the same specific HLA gene mutation. To test this directly, the researchers tracked down T cells that were frozen after being harvested from people with that same mutation prior to COVID even existing. They thawed them out, gave them SARS-CoV-2, and sure enough, those T cells attacked and killed it immediately. So it turns out that abnormal gene's proteins are really good at grabbing just the right part of a coronavirus to get a quick response. So people who have that mutation and who have been exposed to any random common cold in their lives, which is pretty much everybody, are more likely to be asymptomatic. Pretty cool, right? And this research isn't just super interesting, but it also gives researchers clues on how we might be able to treat conditions like long COVID, or how we might be able to stop the next pandemic before it even starts. I should mention that I have no idea if this particular group of people with this gene mutation maps onto any particular race or ethnicity. I tried to figure out if I'm in that group as someone who has never experienced COVID symptoms, nor have I ever tested positive. But my 23andMe data doesn't seem to include HLA, and the marrow donor program doesn't offer data back to volunteers. That said, it is certainly possible that the people who have this gene mutation all tend to be of one particular race or ethnicity. HLA types do tend to differ between ethnic groups to the point that your ethnicity affects your chances of finding a match in the bone marrow registry, which is why it's super important to encourage a wide diversity of people to join the registry. But again, this mutation's advantage was only just discovered. The people who have it are in a vast minority. A virus that targets everyone who doesn't have it would be wildly inefficient. And I can absolutely guarantee you that the people who have this mutation are not going to turn out to be exclusively Chinese and Ashkenazi Jew. That's not going to happen. So in conclusion, do register to donate bone marrow, and don't vote for RFK Jr. and his racist pseudoscience. Hey everybody, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. If you loved the video, please subscribe. And if you think the world could use more videos like this and you happen to have a few bucks laying around, head to patreon.com/Rebecca and join an awesome community of nerds like the people whose names you see on the screen right now. Thanks.